In 20-plus years of television, Steve Harvey has made millions of people cry. He's delivered surprise checks and reunions and dream vacations. He stood beside people at the hardest moments of their lives and found the exact right words to say. He has held his composure through things that would have wrecked lesser men. Because that's what professionals do. Because that's what the job demands. Because the show must go on. On a spring afternoon in California, a 4-year-old boy with terminal cancer asked Steve Harvey a single question. And Steve Harvey cried for 10 minutes. This is Elijah's story. Elijah Marcus Tate was 4 years and 3 months old when he met Steve Harvey. He had been diagnosed with a brain tumor at the age of 2, a glioblastoma, the same aggressive, merciless cancer that takes adults in months and takes children in the cruelest way imaginable, slowly, and then all at once. His parents, Dana and Wendell Tate, had spent the last 2 years in a world most parents can't imagine. Hospitals, clinical trials, road trips to specialists, insurance appeals, second opinions, third opinions, fourth opinions, always hoping the next doctor would say something different, would open a door they couldn't see. None of them did. The door stayed closed. But here is what you need to understand about Elijah. This child was not sad. He was not diminished. He was not the tragic, thin-voiced little figure that people imagine when they hear the words terminal pediatric cancer. Elijah was electric. His mother Donna would later tell a journalist, "He woke up every single morning like the day was the most exciting thing that had ever happened. Even the bad mornings. Even the hospital mornings. You'd walk in and he'd look at you and say, 'What are we doing today?' Like whatever you said, he was ready. Like the world owed him an adventure, and he was going to collect. He loved exactly 4 things above everything else: dinosaurs, his stuffed giraffe named Larry, banana pancakes, and Steve Harvey. Elijah had discovered Family Feud the way most 4-year-olds discover things, by accident, by wandering into the living room when his parents were watching, and being immediately captured by the energy of this enormous, funny man in the bright suit, who made everyone around him feel like everything was okay. He started requesting it by name. The Funny Man Show, he called it, because he hadn't quite locked in Steve Harvey yet, though by the time he met him, he absolutely had. He could imitate Steve's walk, the wide-legged, confident stride, and would perform it across the length of the hospital corridor during rounds when he felt good enough to be up. The nurses would stop and applaud. Doctors would pull out their phones. Dana would video it with her hands shaking, the way parents video things when they know they're collecting. His oncologist told Dana quietly during a particularly hard week that Elijah's spirit was genuinely medically remarkable. "I've seen a lot of kids," she said. "He's different. I don't know what you're doing. Keep doing it." What they were doing was letting him love the things he loved without restraint, including the funny man. Donna had submitted a wish request through the show's charitable outreach program 6 months before the taping. She wrote honestly and without embellishment, her son was dying. He loved Steve Harvey with his entire 4-year-old heart, and she wanted him to meet the man before time ran out. The show called her within a week. Elijah wore his best outfit to the studio, a little plaid button-down that his grandmother had sent from Louisiana, paired with tiny sneakers that lit up when he walked. He was having a good day, which was never guaranteed and always a gift. He sat in a special seat near the front of the studio audience, flanked by his parents and his stuffed giraffe, Larry. The production team had set up a small table with banana pancakes. Dana had mentioned his favorite food in passing, and someone on staff had quietly arranged it. When Elijah saw the pancakes, he looked at his mother with an expression of pure, uncomplicated joy. "They knew," he said, as if this was simply more evidence that the world was fundamentally good. Steve Harvey's team always briefs him on special audience members before taping. Some hosts prefer not to know too much, keeping their reactions natural. Steve Harvey had read everything about Elijah. He'd spent time with the file in his dressing room, and his assistant noted afterward that he was very quiet getting ready that day. Not sad, exactly. Quiet in the way people get when they are trying to prepare themselves for something that can't be prepared for. When Steve walked out onto the stage, the audience erupted with its usual energy. He did his opening, got the crowd warm, started working the room. And then, as the production team had arranged, he made his way toward the front row. Toward Elijah. Elijah saw Steve Harvey walking toward him and did what Elijah apparently always did when he was overwhelmed with happiness. He immediately stood up, grabbed Larry the giraffe by the neck, and held him up in the air, as if presenting the giraffe as an offering, as an introduction. Steve Harvey stopped walking and stared at this 4-year-old holding a stuffed giraffe in the air, and something moved across his face that the audience caught before he could smooth it away. He crouched down. "Who is this?" Steve asked, pointing at Larry. "Larry," Elijah said, simply. Then, with the seriousness of someone conveying important information, "He's a giraffe." "I can see that he is," Steve said. "Is he nice?" Elijah considered this. "He's okay," he decided. "He doesn't say much." The audience laughed, and Steve Harvey laughed, and Elijah, satisfied that his giraffe had been properly introduced, sat down and looked at Steve with the focused attention of someone who had questions. Steve asked Elijah about himself, what he liked, what he thought about, what he'd been doing lately. Elijah answered everything with characteristic precision. Dinosaurs were the best animals. Banana pancakes were better than regular pancakes for reasons that should be obvious. And the hospital was okay, but the TV in his room was kind of small. Steve Harvey listened to all of this with complete attention. Not the performed attention of a television host, but the real kind. The kind where your body settles, and your eyes don't move, and the rest of the room disappears. And then Elijah got quiet. His mother Dana, watching from the seat beside him, recognized this look. This was Elijah's thinking face. He'd been working something out for a while, she could tell, and now he was ready to ask. He looked at Steve Harvey very directly, the way only small children can look at people, with no filter and no performance. And he said, "Are you scared of dying?" There is a specific, physical quality to silence in a large room. Not the absence of sound, exactly, more the presence of held breath. Every person in that studio held their breath at the same moment, and the collective effect of it was a silence that pressed against the walls. Steve Harvey did not answer immediately. He looked at Elijah. He looked at this child, this 4-year-old, who was going to die and knew it in some interior, intuitive way, who had somehow distilled the largest question a human being can ask, and aimed it directly at the only adult in the room who looked like he might have an answer. "Are you scared of dying?" Steve Harvey's composure, the armor that 25 years of live television builds around a person, came apart slowly, the way ice thaws, the way a tide comes in, not all at once but inevitably. His eyes grew bright. His throat moved. He looked down at his shoes for a moment. Then he looked back at Elijah. "Yeah, buddy," he said. His voice was rough. "Yeah, I think about it sometimes." Elijah nodded, taking this in. Not disturbed, just thinking. "Me too," he said. Then, with the airy confidence of someone sharing a solution, "But Larry says it's probably going to be okay. He says it's like going somewhere you haven't been yet." Steve Harvey pressed his hand over his mouth. His eyes closed. What happened in the next 10 minutes was captured by every camera in the studio, but it was also the kind of thing that cameras can't fully contain. Steve Harvey wept, not quietly, not the polished, single-tear television cry. He wept the way people weep when something reaches into the place they thought was protected and holds it. Production stopped. The director on the floor made the call quietly, without announcement, because anyone with eyes could see that there was no resuming until there was a resuming. The audience didn't need to be told to be quiet. They were already quiet, many of them crying themselves, watching this enormous man with his hand over his face, crouched beside a 4-year-old with a giraffe. Elijah, for his part, did not seem alarmed by Steve's tears. He looked at him thoughtfully. Then he placed one small hand on Steve's knee. A patting motion, the gesture adults use to comfort children, performed in perfect reverse. "It's okay," Elijah said. "Larry's right most of the time." Dana Tate later said she didn't know whether to laugh or keep crying, so she did both simultaneously. Eventually, Steve Harvey collected himself enough to look at Elijah again. His eyes were red. He made no effort to fix his face or pretend the previous 10 minutes hadn't happened. "You know what?" he said. "I think Larry might be right." Elijah smiled. The case was closed. Steve Harvey spent the remainder of that afternoon's taping session making sure Elijah was at the center of every good thing he could think of. More pancakes appeared. Larry was given his own name tag by a production assistant who printed it on the office label maker. Elijah was brought on stage and given the microphone for approximately 3 minutes, during which he conducted what he called "my own show" and asked 4 different audience members if they were scared of dinosaurs. 3 of them said yes. Elijah shook his head like a disappointed professor. Before they left, Steve pulled Dana aside. He pressed an envelope into her hands. She started to protest, and he shook his head. "It's not enough," he said simply, "but take it." She took it. She later disclosed that the envelope contained a personal check, not from the show's budget, from Steve Harvey himself, large enough to cover 6 months of out-of-pocket medical costs. Elijah Marcus Tate passed away 4 months after the taping, on a Sunday morning, at home, with his parents beside him. Dana said he had watched an episode of Family Feud the night before. He'd fallen asleep with Larry tucked under his arm. She posted his photo online that day with a caption that read, "He asked all the questions that mattered." He was never, ever afraid. He loved the funny man to the end. Our heart, our light, our Elijah. Steve Harvey shared the post without comment. He added only a single hand over heart emoji. What is the right question? Not the clever one, not the strategic one, not the one designed to impress or protect or deflect. The right question is the one a 4-year-old with a stuffed giraffe asks to the biggest, most famous person in the room, in front of a studio full of cameras and strangers, because he genuinely wants to know. Elijah Marcus Tate was 4 years old, and he was braver than most of us will ever manage to be. If this story meant something to you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell someone about Elijah today. Larry says it's going to be okay, and Larry's right most of the time.